Willie, we're standing in front of the 1907 Pierce Great Arrow, which is a phenomenal car.
It is a fabulous car. I mean, it's huge.
It's big.
It's a lot of power. When you think about 1907, 65 horse.
65 horse is quite a bit, and that's out of a 6-cylinder.
Yes.
Originally a producer of household goods, the Pierce Company shifted part of its production to automobiles in 1901. By 1903, Pierce had found success with their popular Arrow motorette, solidifying the company's position in the early automobile market. In 1904, Pierce decided to move into the larger, more luxurious car market that would become the hallmark of their brand. A 1907 Great Arrow was the 5th automobile to arrive on the streets of Fairbanks in September 1909. It's hard to imagine that they were actually using this car back then to transport gear and people, because it is such a nice car. It would be akin to having Mercedes G-Wagon and being a contractor and using it for your plumbing business.
Right, but a good example of that is it was bought by a barber.
What?
And he wanted to use it just strictly as an income source to haul people to the mines, to the villages and stuff that are close to Fairbanks. He wanted to have enough power to get it through the snow and the mud in the hills, and enough room to haul freight and passengers, bring in some money.
I mean, that's crazy to me because it's such a nice car. I mean, how much was a barber making in the 1900s?
I wish I could tell you, but I really don't know.
Ah, man, your haircuts would be so cheap. The Pierce Great Arrow wasn't just a luxury car, it was a pioneer in Alaska's wilderness, embodying the resilience and spirit of early Alaskan life.
When they brought those cars up here, they used them hard. And it's kind of sad because the Great Arrow that came here was a very abused car.
Oof.
You got to remember, they didn't know how to drive, first of all.
Right.
They didn't know how to maintain the vehicles or handle them properly. And so it caught fire after a couple of years.
I hate when that happens. This story even made the Fairbanks Daily News minor. The car turned into a fireball because of a leaking gas tube. It burned so hot that no one could get close enough to extinguish the flames.
Burned it up. They restored it, brought it back to life. A couple of years later, caved in on a bridge, drowned it in a river.
And the same car made the news yet again. It was crossing a bridge that suddenly collapsed, plunging its 6 occupants into the Chena River. The passengers barely escaped with their lives.
Brought it back to life again, and finally by 1922 was the last you ever heard about it. And my guess is it's probably either over the bank in the Chena River to stop erosion, or they drove it out on the Tanana River on the ice in the spring and just let the ice take it out. And that happened a lot. That's how they got rid of a lot of stuff up here.
So Willie, you're telling me that somewhere in Fairbanks in the Chena River, there's a Great Arrow?
Very possible.
Can you imagine this car sinking in the Chena? I feel like it'd be pretty quick.
It's so big that it would take forever to be ate up by the river.
Yeah, and probably made a phenomenal beaver dam.
Oh, absolutely.
The Great Beaver Dam.
Yep.
So we were using this Great Arrow in Fairbanks. Obviously, it had a big engine, 648 cubic inches,
Yes.
6-cylinder, about 65 horsepower. I mean, what's special about this motor?
Well, now you have to understand that back in the day, they had no computers. And so little things like this has individual cylinders cast, mounted to the crankcase. Each cylinder is separate. One carburetor, and it comes up through this elaborate tubing for the intake manifold. Now what's amazing is when you think about, okay, you have that coming up like that, how do you get the exact amount of fuel to each cylinder? And that's what this fancy design is the flow of the fuel so it gets the exact same amount into each cylinder, which it has primer cups back here so that you could put a little fuel in there, because if you're gonna hand crank this car, it's a lot of engine to turn over.
Oh yeah.
And so you'd put a little fuel in there so that when you turn the switch on and you pull the crank, it might light off quicker.
Willie, as I understand, 1901 is when Pierce made their first single-cylinder engine, and to go from that to this in 1907 is pretty impressive.
It is.
And a brass era car, which this would be considered. I'm seeing a brass intake manifold.
Yes, brass was a commodity and a material that was available. If you look close, it's got an aluminum crankcase, cast iron cylinders for strength and durability. All these have water jackets in each one, tied together. Up here on top, another piece of brass going there. And brass, if you polish it up, is beautiful. I mean, it takes a little bit of maintenance to keep it looking that good.
I totally get why they would want this car in Fairbanks. It's big. I mean, you can haul lots of people, lots of gear. Being inside this transports you back into time.
It does. And I mean, it's remarkable what they were doing at the time. I mean, seats are comfortable.
It looks big from the ground, but being up here, you feel like you're on top of the world.
Right, and it's kind of unusual. It's got a column shift in it. That's very rare, and I mean, that's how you would shift it. You would lift it up out of the notch and pull it down, and that's the clutch. And they're a little bit difficult to push, you know, they're not easy because they're a cone type clutch. And a brake over here, and a throttle here. This is kind of unusual, or you know what that is?
Looks like some sort of speedometer.
It is the speedometer.
Hey!
And it has a trip meter and an odometer.
Wow, that's pretty fancy. So you could actually reset the trip meter.
Yes, yeah. So you could tell, okay, I need to go 6 miles. So now you knew how much to charge the people in the back.
Ah!
The emergency brake here, and they didn't have what they call park brakes today. They had emergency brakes.
I see there's actually a horn on the floor, but what were you using a horn for back then?
Well, you might have a moose or something on the road that you needed to get.
You need to goose that moose? Can we goose it? Whoa! So, thinking about how we ended up with this car. So we have original photos of Fairbanks.
Yes.
Saw a great arrow, and then you decided to chase and find and see if there's one still in existence.
Well, we looked around and trying to find them, couldn't really find one. The owners at this time did not want to sell this car. And so I knew we were going to have to be patient and persistent and stay with it to get it.
And how patient were you? Really, how long did this take?
Approximately 4 years.
Wow.
But we got it.
We got it.
And it's here.
So a long restoration process. Clearly, Alan Schmidt, who did the restoration, did a phenomenal job. So
yes.
You got to visit it in the shop and we're like, we absolutely need this here at the museum.
I would see it at least once a year and during its process of being restored. And it was impressive every time I seen it.
What's special about this model?
It's one of 3 left. And so it's kind of important to be able to find a great arrow. If we wanted to have a great arrow, it had to be this one.
This great arrow wasn't just a luxury car, it was a workhorse.
And it's right here in the Fountainhead Antique Auto Museum in Fairbanks, Alaska.
We need to get them here to see it.
Absolutely.
Come on down. Here at the Fountainhead Antique Auto Museum, we have so much content we want to share with you. Please, please, please like, comment, and subscribe right now.